Hi, everybody. It's Ron, and today we have another installment of headlines, more headlines every day. Let's get right to it. Here we have dominating the news again throughout all these aggregation type of sites are the exciting or thrilling or alarming or clickbaiting news that we have out of Israel and the Gaza Hamas war that's going on there. I noted here's some kind of, here we have from the Jerusalem Post, which is obviously going to be an Israeli, pro-Israeli source. We have some kind of cheerleading for the Christian cowboys defending Israel's heartland. These are obviously going to be Americans. There's a subsection of Christian, more fundamentalist. I actually was sort of raised in this arena a little bit when I was young, sort of people who are very pro-Israel, very pro the creation of the Israeli state for various reasons, and it is sort of an down home sort of thing. So we've got these American cowboys coming to Israel, which is a little funny. It's kind of a human interest story. I wanted to show this thing here. This was interesting about, it does indicate to us the state of the media in the world today, where, the BBC admits to mistakes after refusing to call Hamas terrorists. And this is probably indicative of how news is being reported nowadays, where, before we had maybe in the past, we had people trying to be impartial about news coverage, even in big outlets. Now, of course, people who reported news until the event of AI were only human, and they do have their biases, but the intent, at least, was to try to be impartial. But we have the internet era that came along, and thus we suddenly have, you got to give an opinion. You've got to give some extra human interest aspect to the story. The reporter has to become part of the story. The reporter has to show how deeply they feel about it. I saw this especially maybe in the last 20 years in CNN, where you have the CNN reporter there, in his shirt sleeve, but there's a lot more of the reporter talking about how they feel about certain things. So this is something new. And with that, even the music, you go back to old newscasts, there's a lot of them on the air now, or on the air on YouTube, you can watch. They didn't have little music in the background. Nowadays, you have this pumping, exciting music. So what we have here with what the BBC was trying to do to be politically correct is something even beyond that. It's beyond giving your opinion and stuff. It's trying to kind of be careful not to offend people. And I think this is sort of something beyond just trying to be impartial, because you might say that not calling one side or the other terrorists is trying to be impartial, but there's also the aspect of holding back information or holding back the truth about something, even an organization's own descriptions of themselves. And this is interesting. I suppose it also shows how these news organizations feel like they have to sort of follow public opinion. And in this case, in the Israeli Palestinian or Hamas war that's going on, these wars have been going on for decades. It's nothing new, nothing that we shouldn't maybe have expected. But the attitudes in the West, in the liberal West, are something that is very, very different than anybody has seen before in terms of public opinion. All of the protests supporting the Palestinians, supporting even Hamas, a terrorist organization, and actually going so far as to kind of be against Israel or attack Jewish people. So this is something that is something different. and it throws a cog into the way these stories have been reported over the years. This was an interesting. There was some sort of accusations that I think have been retracted by now, but that maybe some news organizations had advanced knowledge of the Hamas attack, the original incursion into Israel, and there's another follow-up article, and basically the organization that made this argument is sort of retracting it. They're saying, we believe there was no forward knowledge. But, excuse me, why would we think there might be forward knowledge? Because we live in the internet age, and we live in an age where we can directly impact public opinion by being first on the scene, by tweeting first, by getting stuff onto kids' eyeballs on TikTok. So you would think that part of the design of the attack on Israel has to be how it plays in the West and how we present it on the social media. And even saying that, they were pretty open in taking hostages and showing how far they were willing to go. And still, they had a lot of positive response in the West supporting those actions. It's really an unprecedented situation. There's stuff about deleting cartoons, have to be sensitive, not to use racial stereotypes. I don't know. Obviously, that's what you're supposed to have editors in these newspapers for. Either you want to put it there or not. Either you want to take a stand or not. I don't know. Here's Eric Adams. This is the mayor of New York City. Scandals. This is, even for me, I'm not from the east of the United States or these big cities. They're real fun places to visit, but maybe you wouldn't want to live there. The politics, this is where Trump came from. Like New York, that area, that's like its own country. It's so big, it's so wealthy, it's so amazing, It's sort of maybe like, if you've been to Hong Kong, it's like Hong Kong times 100. Those are dense buildings, it's its own world, and it's filled with weird political scandals. Here's something about, this supposedly the mayor got money into his campaign fund via Turkey, of all places. So, who knows? Anyway, it's sort of a weird cesspool. Anybody who gets involved in politics there is involved in these big scandals that are huge news within sort of the country of New York City. And this sort of stuff would dominate their coverage there. Here we talked about this yesterday with elections there, with Republicans kind of getting hurt on abortion issues in the elections the other day. Here's more about Trump. Same sort of thing we see day after day. It's always said that the big news organizations loved when Trump was president as their ratings, their viewership soared. Trump always delivered on saying crazy things, saying things to that people needed to comment on, to condemn or praise. And when they praised it, it created more controversy, which was more ratings. So something here, even this word. See, when I was a kid, this word, which I still don't like to say in public, it was never reported in the press. And I got into the press in the mid-90s when there was somebody, Bobbitt, who had his member cut off by some woman for some reason. And suddenly that word was in the press and it was used, and it's been used openly since then. And here's this strange looking person. Well, too much Botox? I don't know. I don't, those are other words that I'm not sure that I ever thought I would see in the media. It's erections. And here's a guy who wants to be like looks like a 40-year-old woman with plastic surgery. I don't know. We'll see. My face is sagging too. Who knows what I'll do. More something about wrestling, illegal meat trade. This is something we touched on a few days ago, maybe last week. We see now America's adversaries see weakness in the United States, perhaps. This is why a lot of things that are happening in the world, the Russia-Ukrainian war, the incursion into Gaza, let me turn off my phone. I always forget to do that. We have a thing in Russia. We have a thing in Israel and Gaza. We have China saber rattling. Now, why this is happening is they say this can stretch America too far. America, like it or not, they're the policemen of the world. They pay for everything in the world, the taxpayers. They have military bases everywhere in the world. They keep all the lanes of the trade free, open, not only for themselves, but usually for other allies that buy the bonds that finance the debt of the United States. The U.S. just does all that. We start to look at lists of military bases and U.S. deployments around the world. You'd say, like, wow, this is Roman Empire, eat your heart out. The U.S. has done you one better. So we have the situation that was mentioned a few days ago that what if the U.S. really got into big trouble and felt like they would have to instate the draft again instead of the all-volunteer army? Of course, the answer is, the kids of today that we've raised up on social media who are derisively called certain names, snowflakes, and all this sort of stuff. I'm sure that's there's a subset of kids that are tough, and there's a subset of kids that are soft. And I suppose it's the parenting that has created this situation in one way or another. But it would seem kind of difficult to imagine that generation could possibly be drafted to fight a war. I don't know, are we supposed to draft the girls too, to be fair? Because women are supposed to do everything that men can do. And then we have this interesting thing this is a trend. A lot of Americans embrace Trump's authoritarianism. This is part about the worldwide movement of populism. It's obviously not a trend. I mean, we can condemn it as something, just as some sort of a trendy thing, but it's obvious that certain issues have pushed a certain segment of the population to rebel against the status quo, or the accepted thing that media, that the print media, that entertainment has telling people about. And this has to do with social issues, like starting even with the embrace of gay marriage, things like that, which, I'm for liberty. I think most people are for liberty. So if people want to do things like that, I don't understand why it's not an issue. But there are very religious people, and you go beyond gay issues into other sort of issues, transgender issues. And I think maybe it went too fast for certain conservative groups in the world. And then you also have, very much for reasons that are not entirely clear, this kind of open border situations where people, even in remote areas in the United States, suddenly see a lot of foreigners there. Maybe this is the same sort of situation more than a century ago when the Irish were pouring into the United States, and people then saw the Irish as some sort of subhuman people, But here, a century later, all Americans are part Irish, and they embrace that culture. So some of these issues, like the social issues, like the immigration issues, have caused, I'm sure of it, I'm certain, it's my opinion, but I'm sure of it, this growing in populism around the world. And when populist leaders have gotten into power and they're starting to swagger around and wanting to change things, the existing power structures in these countries have kind of stopped them or forestalled them. I mean, Trump got he has all these indictments and legal charges now, and he was impeached twice, which is supposed to be a very serious thing for a precedent. I don't know if it is now, since it's being used so much and so quickly. Not saying it was unjustified, but so this has contributed to people saying we need stronger action. We might need to tear down some of the safeguards in government that prevent this sort of thing from happening, that retard power. Certainly we see this. We see both sides. What happened before this, when Hamas went into Israel and triggered all this, we had the situation for so long in Israel where they were changing the way the courts interacted with the prime minister, and if they could overturn certain things that branch of government could do, which caused a lot of consternation. And behind this, as behind all these populist moves, is the idea that we need to take firm action to save the country, the status quo, or to bring it back to greatness again. That recalls Trump's slogan. So, and I know, there's a thing you'll hear about this. I believe it's the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank in the United States. I haven't been totally separated from that. I do have some connection to that years and years ago. But they apparently have been working to develop this plan with the Trump or the MAGA people to clear out the bureaucrats in Washington if and when another Trump or very right-wing president would get in there. And this is to make sure that the dictates of the president in trying to change the country are carried out. So you can imagine, I think everybody across the board has to feel a little bit of consternation that people feel they have to cut this deep into the safeguards of the country or into the bureaucracy to make their changes. So I don't know how to combat this. I hope just the time passes and these things will not happen. But we're going through this interesting snapback, this populist era where people are pushing back against some of the fast changes that have been presented and pushed on people via the media in all its forms and government. That was a long digression. I didn't mean to talk that long about that. That's a very interesting subject. Could do a whole show about that. Maybe get some people in here and discuss it. This is fantastic. I think Americans of all stripes love this and think it's fantastic because it shows we think we're a cool nation to have this ultra exotic stuff, and Americans know this is old technology. The stuff that they have that's secret this is always like at least 2 generations behind the stuff that they have to present out, and they got to present it only because the budget information is going to be leaked, or there's going to be press back against the huge budgets to make these in Congress. So they've got to make a case for it in public. So the Congress people will get on board. This is B-21 Raider. It's a nuke airplane stealth. It's amazing something this cool and exotic looking is actually designed not for the look and for the functionality of the stealth attributes of it. Other thing I was surprised at is you're still making these planes with humans in them and not just drones. You'd think you would have drones. I'm not sure what the reason is why you have to have the bomber. There must be some, doesn't say, but it just I suppose the missiles are not stealth. These are stealth, and in certain situations, might need to sneak in. The old joke about this in the defense industry is to say, why do we have to build any of them? You just build one for show, and then you tell people they're stealth. We got 50 of them flying over your country right now. China and the U.S. going to have a meeting. San Francisco clears away the homeless. These sort of sound like headlines that could appear anytime. Actors strike over. Here's the thing about Thiel, and we talked about this yesterday. In many days in succession, I'm in succession, and I'm going to hammer this home still. It's the smoke-filled room time, both in the Republicans and the Democrats. The Republican bigwigs, the smoke-filled rooms, these are the guys that are smoking the cigars in the smoke-filled rooms. This comes from a late 19th century idea where you had the party bigwigs that would pick the nominee, not in the convention or in the elections, but in the smoke-filled rooms. They'd decide among themselves while smoking cigars like the fat cats they are. So what we have here is we have Thiel that's pulling away from Trump and attacking him. This is all part of the movement to say, can we get somebody else, draft him in there? It looks like they would like to have DeSantis be there, even though he's kind of failed as a primary challenger so far. Same thing we have on the Biden side. There's more articles coming up on that. Facebook, biopic. I don't know. I think it's too soon for a Musk biopic because it has to be political. It has to condemn him. It has to be a one side. Half the audience is going to object to it. The other half is going to like it. Aliens are foreign powers. Pentagon UFO chief says someone is in our backyard. This something I haven't talked about in this series yet. So I haven't signed anything. Well, here's what we can look at when all this alien, like, why is the U.S. revealing all this stuff? Not from crazy Yahoo nutbags, but from real common people. Why? Who are in the military guys, people who know. So the question we'd ask ourselves is, why is it happening now? Because there's been a wide knowledge or wide acceptance that based on any numbers of ways of looking at nature, the universe, evidence that there must be other powers, entities out there in space or somewhere, maybe inner space, maybe time travelers, maybe things we can't understand, maybe some sort of intelligence that we don't quite can't conceive of in biological terms. It seems reasonable to assume, considering many things, that is the case. And we know that for many decades, the powers that be in the United States and most of the other countries that are in the sphere, maybe not France. France has been more open with UFO stuff, but the other countries, they've basically said, it's either your swamp gas, you're lying, or it's crazy. And the media has basically backed that up. So they've just said, don't worry about it. We looked all these up, and there are a few we didn't know, but no big deal. Don't worry about it. And there has been a sort of a collusion between the government and the media to put this forward. So after so many decades of doing this and doing it very successfully, why now are they rolling this out? So there must be a reason. There's one whole concept of, it's sort of like the Amazonian rainforest or something, where you have an uncontacted tribe and then you bring in this alien power, which would be, modern human civilization to them. And then within a generation, they've lost all their beliefs. The women have become prostitutes. The men have all become drunk. It's a clash of civilizations between different levels of belief. I could explain this longer, but I think you probably get what I'm getting at. But it would be thought, if our people with our weird ideas, our polarizations, all the crazy things that we think, all of the fractionalized politics just on this earth. If there was a greater power, that came here and we knew about them, within a generation, we would be worshiping them. All religions would be ended. Everybody would have lost their myths. We need the myths to live. We need the blueprint of life and death. There's something about our minds. The 4 or 5 inches or more of the gray matter in there became so complex that we need to have some sort of mythology, some sort of reason to think about what happens after we die. Each of us, we're looking out of the portholes of our eyes, and we're the god of our own little world. How can we end? So our minds are so complex. We need these things to keep ourselves from hating ourselves, to keep ourselves from going crazy with the self-awareness that we have or that we think we have. So this is one reason why, even if the government knew about aliens, they'd probably keep it a secret, because it might hurt society, hurt culture, hurt civilization at this level of our development. The other reason is probably the number one reason, even before that. It's like, what would happen if the aliens had open relations with China? And what if they gave some sort of power to China or Russia, and that could make all the guns in America disappear, or could change the minds of people to want to resist the Communist Party taking over or something? The unimaginable power that a higher intelligence might be able to inflict on us, that's very scary. But it might be even more scary to our fractionalized politics on this earth to think that one of our adversaries might get it. This was always thought to be perhaps might be a trigger of a future nuclear conflict. That is, if we thought China was doing that and was just going to implement this sort of weapon or power against us, what choice might another country have if they suspected that? Might they nuke them? Something like that. Anyway, doesn't this sound incredible? But it's possible. And you see what's happening here. They are rolling this out. Now, it could be that this sort of information is close to leaking out anyway. The whole reason, if you go back to the 80s and the initial stealth bomber, the government was not going to tell anybody about that stealth bomber. And the reason is because, got alarms going off all over the place. The reason they weren't is that it gives our adversaries a heads up to say, you guys better need to work on your radar, because we got this invisible thing, and it tells those countries they need to work on their countermeasures. But anyway, it was kind of leaked out by Congress people who didn't want to pay for it and who had other access to grind. So that's the only reason we started to learn about this level of stealth exotic technology. So could be this is the case here, where it seems like it's going to be inevitable that there will be revelations, or maybe these entities, whatever they are themselves, have said that they do wish to be open or be known for some reason. Maybe there's a change in U.S. policy in that they're going to implement more exotic technologies, and they can no longer cover this under the false story that, well, we're just the scientists made it up. You never know, but there is something that is behind this. So I'm not sure what it is. Maybe somebody, if you know anything, let me know. Tell me in the comments. But that was also a long aside. I didn't mean to go on about that, but that is super interesting. I haven't talked about it before. Well, yeah, maybe we'll get some more information soon on that. See, we have this Air Force officer goes public with encounters used to very rarely, and this stuff was tamped down. Don't want to excite the public. Do not clean up trash in the oceans. This was interesting. In a nutshell, there's an article here. Do not clean up trash in the oceans. Essentially, it's that 95% of the effort should be to stop putting stuff in the ocean, and only 5% for cleanup, because it's going in a lot faster than we can take it out. It's sort of foolish that, and I think that the ocean naturally agitates it to pieces eventually. We just got to stop polluting in the first place. More downward things on the economy. There's world population. We talked about that yesterday. It's going to start going down at the middle of this century, in just about 20 years, based on various factors. You look at yesterday's video for some notes on that. This is fascinating. I don't know why I love this so much. Quite interesting. It's the Putin body doubles. He does look like an average sort of guy who might have body doubles. I do too. Without my long hair, I'm just like an average looking white guy. Occasionally I'm walking around somewhere and I see someone, it's like looking in the mirror, especially back where I'm from, hometown, this sort of nose and kind of slight underbite. Very common. So here we have Putin, who obviously people in the West who are opposed to Russia's actions in Ukraine are not really hoping for a military victory on one side or the other, but you always hope for some sort of internal political change. So I'm sure there's a lot of feelers that have gone out to generals and people say, yeah, maybe you want to make a change there. So Putin, he would probably see the danger to his power coming from internally, the other people. And we saw that with the head of the Wagner group getting killed. You know, he tried to have an open rebellion against Putin. And so here we have things. I suppose this could be due to chemo. You know, you get thin, you get puffy, you get water bloat. But the Ukrainians are insisting he has a body double. And then the one thing to note on this is enemies of the West, particularly of the United States, always have to be conceived of as being ill and sick and almost ready to die. And of course, the second Putin became an enemy of the West in Ukraine in a big way, that's what they say about him. And this is all about, these are the spokesmen saying that he's not stable, that he could die any day now. There were rumors last week that he was already dead. And we saw this with everybody who's an enemy of the West, from the Ayatollah Khomeini in the late 70s. So we said he was about to die. He was about to die. He's almost dead. Same with Osama bin Laden. Same with Saddam Hussein. You know, if you're a dictator, immediately they got to talk about how you're really sick. You got to have all this medical attention and you're weak and decrepit. I think that also says something about the attitude that the West or Americans have about the rightness or the goodness of their cause, that they think they are right and good and healthy and strong, and those who are against it are villains and are decrepit or have sort of faults in some way, physical faults that are a manifestation of their evil. More about Russian nuke moves. Prince Harry, don't care anymore. Stuff, some football coach. Oh, here's the other thing I wanted to hit here. This is the other side of the smoke-filled room. Certainly, this is happening on the Democrat side as well as the Republican side, questioning whether Biden, his extreme age and his decrepitude, maybe if you're not in the United States, you see all of this stuff reported, all the gaffes nearly daily where he can barely speak. United States media sort of downplays that in general. There's certain ones like Fox who would play that up because they're right-wing, but they're so right-wing and they're so biased, it almost cancels out the validity of what they say. This is the state of the U.S. press. not just fringe, but in the major players at present. So you have lots of different people circling. We have mentioned these people. They're bigwigs in governors. One of them is leaving the governorship. Obviously, if you have any chance of being president in your lifetime on the Democrat side, you are going to be circling this situation right now. Not only is Biden thought of as maybe he's too old, but the Republicans could turn a vote for Biden into a vote for the vice president, Kamala Harris, who in her public speaking is often ridiculed for word salad, for not being able to speak coherently, maybe not having the gravity to be a presidential candidate. There are lots of shakeups in her staff that have been reported on. There does seem to be, even in the left-leaning press, a lot of stuff that is openly printed that goes against her as opposed to downplaying it. So this is another situation where, and so the Democrats also have to think they know about the smoke-filled room that the Republicans are doing, that they're trying to draft somebody like DeSantis to replace Trump if possible. So if that person got in there and that person was strong and could appeal to the middle, and since in the 1990s with the Clintons, Bill Clinton, he pioneered the idea of capturing the middle ground, that the not really right-leaning or left-leaning, the middle people. And since then, that's the ground where a lot of people want to land on. And if DeSantis could come in and maybe seem more reasonable, some of the things he said don't sound reasonable, though. You want to make sure that a different challenger other than Trump doesn't outshine a very elderly Biden run for president. What else do we have? This was a scary thing. This weirdo who accosted a senator, Arizona senator, while she was running. Apparently, allegedly. Excuse me. And you see all these true crime videos where they're showing these videos the last time they saw somebody. Well, luckily she got away, and apparently they arrested the suspect. But gosh, how scary that there are kind of otherwise normal-looking people in the world who would do this. And of course, the police, the first thing they would be saying is, asking him, like, what kind of porn you look at. They'd be looking at other crimes that happened, because they would never suspect that this was the very first time that he did it, which is what he'll end up having to say. They would suspect this is an active string of a weirdo, creepy killer, and he's got a lot of other victims, perhaps. So that's scary that there are people in our midst like that. And finally, this was interesting. Patients lining up for 2,500 full-body MRI scans that detect cancer early. That's cool. I always dream of that. They got like in the airport, they've got one of those things you walk through, the metal detectors. Someday they're going to have a metal detector where you walk through that and, it'll say, sir, you got a tumor there in your pancreas. Here's a pill for you. I fear maybe most of us who are watching this today, we were born a little too early to partake of that. But I think we can dream that one day that may come to pass. If not for us, then for another generation. I am a novelist, and this is my book. There Are Still Unknown Places. If you like any of my insights, this has a lot of stories of the lives of people who are living in the concrete metropolis of Bangkok, both foreigners who've come here to work and the local Thais. And all of them are seeing this modern metropolis and its changes, and they're dealing with their own internal struggles and their hopes and dreams, sort of like we all do, all alone sometimes. And it's sometimes fun to run off to unknown places, the furthest places in the world, and that's what the book is about. If you like it, it's on Amazon and Kindle. If you read it, please let me know what you think. And until next time, bye-bye.